There are crucial lessons with women that some men take decades to learn. And some men simply never learn these things at all and go to their grave having been leveraged by a woman that took advantage of them or was just never the right fit to start with. And even if you're in a phase of just wanting to have short-term flings, the same lessons apply in order to have the best experience that you possibly can. So let's talk about some of the foundational lessons that all men must learn before it's too late. Number 1, you cannot negotiate. So time and time again, I see men going out of their way to try and impress a girl with fancy dinners, vacations, gifts, their car, or if it's not material things, they will try to verbally impress the girl in some way and just dig their own grave by talking too much. And obviously, as guys, we want to make a good impression with women and leverage attractive traits, but you must understand that attraction as a whole is a passive, non-negotiable process that takes place. It's not a rational process. It's driven by a complex mix of biological, psychological, and social factors, and that is why you can't convince a woman to find you attractive. Attraction is not a decision, it is a reaction. And when I say attraction, I'm referring to the genuine desire that a woman has for you. Now, if you want to lead with money and date that way, then have at it, but realize that you will never have a woman's genuine desire by being the guy that leads with those things instead of leading with who you are as a man. And I'm not saying to never take a girl out to a nice place or bring her on a vacation with you, but what I am saying is that you cannot negotiate a woman's genuine desire by leading with these things at the forefront of trying to attract her or to try and keep her attraction. You also cannot verbally reason with a woman to be attracted to you. And I'm all for game and charisma, and I think it's a necessity actually, but there are limitations. And again, attraction is not a rational game that you're playing. You're not going to logically convince a girl to find you attractive, and this gets amplified in long-term relationships where guys will often try and negotiate desire with their girlfriend or wife. It's the type of cycle where she begins complaining about random things, and then the guy wants the complaining to stop and the sex to continue, so he does whatever she wants him to do with hopes of scoring points with her. And many guys believe that if they're just a good boy, they'll please their girlfriend or their wife and be back in her good graces. But what they don't realize is that they're committing huge mistakes during this process. And those mistakes usually involve losing the respect of the girl by supplicating to her demands and having no backbone, while simultaneously not taking the lead or needing to be mothered like a child because the guy isn't handling the things he should be. In other words, he just isn't man enough, and you can't make up for that lack of masculinity and desire by doing favors or buying things and verbally negotiating, because attraction is never negotiable. And part of the reason you cannot convince a woman to be attracted to you is because feelings are king, not logic. And this is true for humans in general, it's not just women. If you can change the way someone feels, you will have much greater influence than trying to logically convince them of why they should listen to you or why you're desirable to be around. But with women specifically, the reason why game principles are taught in the first place is because having good game is basically being able to ignite an emotional response within a girl. And honestly, that is the most important skill in dating that you can learn to either attract women or maintain attraction with women in a relationship. If a woman never feels any kind of emotional spikes with you, she is never going to maintain the attraction in the long term or even be attracted in the first place. And this is where guys get this wrong for years and years, and maybe even forever in some cases. They try to communicate with women like you would with a guy. If the woman gets moody, the guy tries to logically figure out what's wrong and talk things out, or even worse, he asks what he can do to make things better, and then she has to lead him and give him the answers to the test, basically. And it's a massive turnoff to a woman when she has to tell a guy what to do. So don't allow yourself to be put in that position to start with. Instead, you need to understand that the battle is a game of feeling, not logic. And I've met plenty of women that appreciate a good, logical conversation, but when it comes to the game of attraction and relationships, trying to be logical all the time is a one-way ticket to boring and frustrating them. It signals that you just don't get it, that you don't understand what's going on, and you'll get much further by aiming to influence her emotional state rather than hoping to logically sway her through debate or some speech that she doesn't care to hear in the first place. Now, another one that guys learn too late in life, if they learn it at all, is that men are highly susceptible to delusion. And we tend to think of ourselves as the more logical sex, which is true in a lot of ways, and how we tend to prioritize logic first in most situations. But what I've noticed is that men are highly susceptible to delusion when it comes to a woman that they're attracted to. I've noticed that some guys will more quickly and easily place a woman on a pedestal than a woman will with a man. In fact, I'd say a lot of the time that women are actually better at keeping it real and understanding what they're actually dealing with, at least early on in the dating process compared to the average guy. But a lot of guys, on the other hand, hand, will simply ignore a girl's red flags like they don't exist, or try to rationalize them in a way that negates them completely. They will basically frame the girl as an angel in their mind, who is clearly not an angel, and then make a series of awful decisions with that girl that sometimes gets them locked down for life with her. Now, of course, both men and women are susceptible to delusion and getting stuck in bad situations, but over time I've noticed that men can really be vulnerable to placing their own idealistic expectations on a woman. Some guys will buy a girl flowers on the first date and pay $200 for a dinner because he believes she deserves that kind of treatment. Meanwhile, some other dude invited her straight to his house and smashed with no investment at all. Or a guy will get ghosted by a girl who went to Miami for the weekend and assume that she was just having a fun time on the beach and was too busy to text back. Or I'm sure we all know a guy that's ignored their girlfriend's garbage behavior for 5 years because he believes that she's a good woman at heart and they have a lot of memories together. And it's this type of delusional stuff that I'm talking about. Living in the clouds instead of staying grounded and facing the truth head on. It's really important as a man to avoid the delusion and rationalization zone and look at the uncomfortable truths head on so you don't end up getting leveraged by a woman and potentially losing out on your life because you committed to the wrong one or knocked up a fling that you should have never had around to start with. Which leads me to my next point, that a woman will always show you her red flags early on. And many guys will act like they were just completely blindsided when a woman cheats on them later or does something disrespectful. They'll say things like, man, she just changed overnight, I don't know what happened. But she didn't change overnight. She was always that woman. You were just ignoring or busy rationalizing her red flags away in your mind. And when I was younger, I dated a couple girls where I did this exact thing. Early on in the dating process, one girl seemed like she just loved attention a little too much on social media, and her stuff was actually pretty tame, but something just flagged me internally and it didn't seem right. And the other girl just gave off a vibe of being promiscuous, even though I didn't really have any proof of it in front of me. It was just a vibe that I got from her behavior. But I continued on anyway and dated both of those girls for a while and eventually regretted wasting time on both of them. Both of those girls had those flags come back around in other ways. And it took me a while to understand that my gut instinct and first read was dead on, and to have confidence in those reads without second guessing myself. Because women quickly show signs of who they are in most cases. The signs are all there in front of you if you just pay attention. You don't have to be a genius to spot them, and you just need to listen to the woman intently and be honest with yourself from there. But oftentimes a lot of men will push those things aside in their head to give the girl a chance, or they think that, well, maybe it's just not what it looks like. Or another common one is just to simply focus on her nice and attractive traits instead of the glaring red flags in the room. But let me tell you something. Every girl that you find attractive on this planet has the exact same capability to treat you nicely and exude that feminine energy that you find attractive. So any one specific girl is not special in that regard. And you can't just focus on her beauty and her sweet little favors and memories that you have together. You have to look beyond all that and avoid delusion. It's an active fight. You have to look at her character, her past and current behavior, and what type of person she is at her core. Because all the girls you date will show you their flags early on, which then makes it your fault down the road when those flags come back up again and you're wondering what happened. And keep in mind that everyone has some kind of flag. It's just about what you're willing to tolerate, and some are clearly worse than others. Now, when vetting red flags, you need to display emotional control. And emotional control in general is something that many men take decades to fully grasp, if they ever get it at all. Plenty of men have gone to their grave while still having hot tempers, pathetic behavior, and an emotional outburst all the time. But when vetting a girl, you need to assume a non-judgmental, relaxed demeanor so that she can openly talk and reveal her flags to you. Otherwise, if you're too serious and judgmental, she's going to be too afraid to open up to you, just like anyone would be, male or female. And the trick is to actually be non-judgmental internally, which again goes back to avoiding delusion. No matter how cute and how sweet this girl is, understand that you're dealing with a human, and that humans do weird, random, and crazy stuff all the time. So don't act shocked when she tells you that she slept with the football team. If you are genuinely shocked by stuff like that, you can be sure that you're operating in a partial delusion again, where you're projecting an image onto her of how you view her or wish her to be, rather than how she actually is, and you need to come back to reality. Understand that emotional control is where the battle is won and lost for us as men. Neither men or women respect a guy that can't control his emotions. And having emotional control doesn't mean trying to not feel anything or never expressing your emotions. It means recognizing which emotional impulses inside of you are going to lead to a negative outcome, or recognizing when your emotions are simply flaring for the wrong reasons, and then gaining control over them with the right decisions. A woman's adoration for you and attraction for you is primarily based on respect, and respect is partially gained by being a man that is in control of his emotions. When you're a guy that cannot be easily moved, you become a pillar of stability and masculinity. And when the opposite happens and you have all of these up and down emotional spikes, or you're easily worked up or easily offended, you lose respect and chip away at that attraction level, especially in a relationship. And I'm not saying to be some stoic robot either, because guys always take things to the extreme. But what I am saying is be slow to anger, slow to react, and when you're dealing with yourself internally, put logic above your own emotion when the pressure is on you. Because a lack of emotional control leads to things like being needy, blowing up a woman's phone with texts and calls, having anger outbursts that look like a kid throwing a tantrum, and just operating from a perspective that emasculates you and losing the respect of both men and women. A lack of emotional control is the most unattractive trait that you can display as a man. And a man that lacks emotional control isn't really useful to anyone and is more of a liability than anything. But on the contrary, a man that is in control is a man that is desired by everyone. Now, this next principle is a foundational one for generating confidence within you and truly having an abundance mindset. It's the main aspect that prevents you from having a scarcity mindset that leads to your downfall. And it's the idea that you must be willing to confidently walk away from it all at any second. And let me explain what I mean. A lot of guys will find themselves in nightmare situations with women because they weren't willing to let her go when she crossed a boundary of his or showed a red flag that should have disqualified her immediately. Again, this can go back to men being susceptible to delusion, but it can also be a conscious awareness of a girl crossing your boundaries and you simply tolerating it to keep consistent sex around, or the fear of not being able to find a girl that is better than her. But if you ever want to have a true abundance mindset and real confidence, you can't be a guy that fears losing a girl who is realistically a bad fit for you. Even if it means going into a dry spell of no women for a while, or cutting off a girl that you think is the most beautiful girl you've ever dated or whatever. You have to be willing to cut them off all the same when it's a situation that isn't good for you to be in. And so many guys never learn this, or if they do, it's late in life when it's simply too late at that point. I've talked to men in their 70s and 80s that have expressed how they married the wrong woman, and if they could do it over again, they would do things differently. And you must do everything in your power to avoid ending up being one of those men that loses years of his life and tons of money on a woman who never deserved it in the first place. This goes for the short term too. Even spending a couple months on a low quality girl can drain your life in various ways. And the only way to avoid these scenarios is to be willing to walk away when a woman crosses your boundaries, treats you with disrespect, or shows traits that you simply don't want to be associated with. Being truly willing to walk away shows that you have standards and you won't tolerate mistreatment or trash behavior. And there's a saying that the person who is willing to walk away from a negotiation has the most power in the negotiation, and it's true for dating and relationship dynamics as well. At the end of the day, the only person who can protect where your life ends up is you. And you don't want to be one of these men that gets to be 70, 80, 90 years old and wishes that you would have done things differently because you learned these lessons too late in life. And with all that said, check the description below if you want to book a one-on-one call with me, sign up for the newsletter, and make sure you watch this video next. And I will see you in the next one.